Welcome to Critical Role Demystified. I'm Mike Christensen, and this is the series where we break down the lessons we can learn as GMs and as players from episodes of Critical Role. Today we're tackling episode 41, In Ruins. If you'd like to support this series, please consider joining my Patreon. Sometimes my videos get flagged for music claims or clips from other media, and I'm not able to make ad revenue, so Patreon really is the best and most consistent way to support me financially, if it's within your means to do so. If not, no worries, I totally get it. As a note, the gang is all here, but Ashley is joining by Skype. As the session opens, Allura urges them to start listing allies they might know about. In world, Allura is doing this because she wasn't in Amon when it fell and doesn't know who lived or died. In the real world, Matt is handing the reins to his players. I also noticed in the previous episode that Allura was really taking charge of the situation, which I think was necessary given that Vox Machina had fallen into the sad gap. But now that it's a new session, and considering this is a game and the players need to make decisions, Allura puts this part of the process in the players' hands. Again, throughout this arc especially, but across a lot of Critical Role, Matt is really good at making sure the players are the central decision makers when it comes to what the players are going to do next, which just makes for much more fun D&D. Now the cast kind of just shrugs and says, we don't know, so Matt does have to keep the session moving himself. So Allura says, we gotta go in the city and find people. And this basically unsticks the party. Suddenly, they've got lots of ideas.
Check the harbor, maybe?
We know that Raskel made secret passageways in different places.
Oh, security tunnels.
Yeah. Did we ever find out if we put one in ours? Did we have one that leads into the town?
We don't know.
We don't know, but I can find
Let's try.
Didn't we have a tunnel made that goes under the wall?
I think
Yeah.
I think we do.
have
did
one
actually.
that goes into the wall.
Yeah.
But does it lead out of the city?
You haven't actually utilized it yet.
No, we've never used it, but they described it to us when they
Brought us here.
Maybe we
First
can
day.
sneak in.
To the city.
Well, yeah.
We need to
And
see
go
if Uriel
where?
is still alive.
Who was with Gilmore?
Gilmore disappeared. I didn't see where he went.
He was alone before it all happened.
That's another place to check.
Yes.
What? Where? Gilmore's?
Gilmore's.
If I'm thinking of where I would go if I didn't know what to do.
That's smart.
What places are left that have a teleportation circle?
What about the Thieves Guild tunnels? Would anyone go there?
Yeah, it depends on who knows. It's a way out of the city once
The
again.
Smuggler's Curves? Oh.
It's not a bad idea either.
Vex points out that the dragons are divided. They could potentially go and strike the dragons while Thordak is here, but nobody has enough magic to get them there today, let alone get back. But they're going to put a pin in that idea. It's a big pin, and it's going to be there for at least a few sessions, but they are coming back to that idea. Vax also asks about Marquette, since they repelled Thordak once when he was a younger dragon, and this means that what Matt has been trying to do for the past few episodes has actually worked. The party wants to go to Marquette. Well, no, okay, that's not really true. That's not really, they're not planning a visit, but they do know about this other continent in their world, even if they haven't been there. And to be honest, in a fantasy game, knowing anything about a place you haven't visited during the campaign is actually genuinely impressive. Allura suggests that she and Drake Thunderbrand, the lightning wizard who traveled here with her, will go to Western and check the local library for records about knowledge they could use against the dragons, if the library is still standing. After all, that would be a stealth mission, and Vox Machina isn't a stealth team, so those two should handle it. Meanwhile, Vox Machina can go look for survivors in Amon. Keela suggests they also go to Vasselheim. It's the other place Allura said might have lots of useful information and allies, but it's also very close to Pyra, where her people have suffered a huge loss. The party also starts discussing how they could maybe use the spinning black orb of death beneath Whitestone and then plan to kill Thordak. And honestly, this scene is just so much fun for me to watch because I'm a weirdo who loves watching the members of Vox Machina talk strategy, even though I've already seen the campaign and I know what plans they're actually going to land on. But it's still fun for me. But one of the reasons these sorts of scenes are so much fun is because I love seeing players unleash their creativity. This episode, and others like it, are especially fun because they're trying to use everything they've encountered so far. How do we kill an unstoppable dragon? Well, we've got some unstoppable magic beneath Whitestone, so maybe we can work with that? Failing that, can one of them be a spy and pose as one of Thordak's minions, possibly somebody named Scanlan? And now they're starting to ask really interesting questions about the world they live in, the nature of dragons, the allies and magic they might have access to, all of which continues to make the world feel more real, which is a really nice side effect. But it also helps just make the players feel like they have a hand on the steering wheel, which is so important. A lot of people use the term railroading to mean a linear plot, and that's sometimes true, but really, railroading in RPGs just means an absence of choices. And here, Matt has finished preparing the new arc, and now he's letting his players loose into the world to see what they're going to do. And thanks to the party's higher level spells and boundless creativity, he's going to have to think on his feet a lot, but we'll come back to that later on in this arc. Keyleth also points out that the dragons might have a spy on the council. Besides General Krieg, there might be a spy again and or still, because 4 dragons attacking right when the entire Cloudtop district was together was perfect timing. It's a sobering thought, but unfortunately not one they can do anything about right now. They decide to take a long rest before going into the city, since it's not like sneaking in at night is going to do anything against the ancient dragon with blindsight, so they might as well get their spell slots back. Vex also whispers to Matt before Allura leaves, and Matt has her roll, and she gets a 24. Then Vex and Allura hug, and we now know that Vex was sneaking the Githyanki skull from the last episode to Allura, so she could take it off their hands. Well played, Laura Bailey. And then Drake casts a spell, and he and Allura turn into lightning sparks and start zipping across the countryside, heading toward Westrin. Before they rest, Keyleth casts Commune with Nature and senses Gilmore is in the city, at or near his shop, but he's weak. She doesn't sense Uriel within the 3-mile radius of her spell, so he could be out of range, or dead, though they don't know whether the spell will detect someone's presence if they're dead. It seems like it might, but they're not sure. So it's possible Gilmore is there, but didn't survive. They just don't know. Either way, Gilmore's shop would be a good place to raid for supplies, which is something Vax does not suggest lightly, but does need to be said. Also, Percy and Grog ask where the skull is, and Vex says that it's well hidden. You bet your ass it's well hidden. The party goes to sleep, and Matt describes their very fitful rest.
You guys find yourselves, as best as you can, resting for the evening. It is an evening of tossing and turning for a lot of you. Flashes of memories. Scanlan, you're plagued by the thought of your newly discovered daughter being not far outside of the city when all this went down. Percy, you have flashes of the idea of Whitestone just recently saved and brought to freedom, being torn asunder by dragons not 2 weeks afterward. You are plagued by visions of the Pyra, the moment that Thordak must have torn through, and the havoc that was wreaked afterward. Both of you can't help but think back to when you first returned to Byroden and seeing the smoldering ruin that you now know to be the work of the Cinder King 15 years before, and those words about wondering if that was the last thing your mother saw. Grog, you want that skull. Pike, your thoughts go back to Vasselheim and the people there that you, out of necessity and need for friendship and to protect them, left behind, knowing that they would be safe. And now the uncertainty as to whether or not Vasselheim still stands and whether or not you left them to a fate that you could have protected them, and that guilt rides on you as well.
Now, I'm normally not a huge fan of telling players how they feel about something. Matt certainly does it a lot more than I do. There's a really lovely moment in episode 56 that I think is really nice and sweet, and is also completely antithetical to what I think you should do as a GM. But everything lands on a spectrum. There can always be exceptions, and not everyone is going to agree. There are benefits to doing so, even just occasionally. But honestly, even if you're not into telling players what their characters are thinking or feeling, dreams are kind of the perfect exception. Now, to pull this off, you kind of need to know the players and their characters really well, but this is something that is very true here. This is the 4th year of their game. They've had 40 weekly games in the past 13 months, so he does know these players and their characters really well. Additionally, he knows that they're all pretty much on board for this story arc, and giving them this sense of how they all feel harrowed and daunted is really just helping guide them deeper into the tone of this session and this arc. Although not everybody needed his guidance here. Marisha is nodding along when he described visions of Pyra because she already suggested they just go to Pyra next anyway. This subject is clearly pretty firmly on her mind already. And it's ridiculous to assume the twins wouldn't be thinking about the death of their mother, since they already discussed her death multiple times in the previous session. So yeah, that one is like a free play bingo space. Side note, when Matt describes this dream, this is the first time somebody actually says that Thordak killed their parents. And when watching it the first time, I remember thinking, wait, what? When did we learn that? Because I don't think we knew they were from Byroden. I don't think we'd heard that name before, so we didn't have the context in the last episode. But here's the other cool thing about describing these dreams. This is a nice way to simulate 8 hours of lying there and being able to let your thoughts wander, when in reality, it's being handled in less than 2 minutes of narration. And while I'm not wild about specifically spelling out to Pike that she feels grief, I'm not going to get bogged down in any specific word choices because this moment is very clearly improvised. Matt didn't have any dreams prepared and pre-written, at least I don't think he did, but I think when he saw his opening, he knew that something needed to fill it. Simply saying, you get the benefits of a rest would not be especially satisfying given the day they just had. But he also probably didn't want to say something like, is there anything else you want to do before you go to sleep? Because that would usually just lead to another two-person role-playing scene, and they've had a bunch of those in the past couple episodes. It's time to actually move the story forward. I'm a big believer in using dreams and visions in my games, but in this case, there's nothing supernatural about them. It's just an extremely useful way to illustrate the traumatic aspect that this event is taking on each of them. And by giving each player each player character a distinct dream tailored to who they are and what they care about, he's doing what he does best. He's validating their role-playing choices and deepening their connection to the world. I do this kind of thing all the time, or at least I try to, especially in my more horror-themed games and or during intense story arcs like this one is. It's a really useful technique to help bring the players into the mood of the game. The next day, Vex slips Jarrett some gold to reward him for guarding the keep, and then they file into the tunnel in their keep and sneak back into Amon. The tunnel comes up into a locked outhouse that isn't really an outhouse, and we get a cute moment that actually kind of affirms what I was just talking about earlier, about the risk of telling players how they feel about something.
That's
30?
yeah. 30.
With a single moment, you're actually feeling with one thumb, you're feeling for the vibrations of each tumbler on the inside of the lock, and as each one progressively clicks, you eventually get to the fourth one before ting, and it hangs open loosely within a matter of 40 seconds. You kind of wish other people had seen that happening, because that was pretty cool maneuver. But you know at least.
Come on up. It wasn't even locked.
Be so modest.
Once again, this isn't a binary thing good or thing bad situation, because what Matt is trying to do is, once again, reward his player for doing something awesome. And that's an awesome thing to do. But the way he describes it does kind of imply that Vax feels a specific way about it, and then Liam denies that, because it's just not in alignment with how he thinks about his character, at least in this moment. It's obviously erroneous to claim that Vax is never competitive ever, but certainly that seems to be the last thing on his mind right now. Anyway, I really do like this moment a lot. It's such a great snippet to see inside Vax's head and see how he thinks about his role in the group. He's not someone who seems to care about praise, which is honestly one of my favorite qualities about Vax and maybe all the characters that he plays in Critical Role. I mean, if you want to discuss this in the comments and talk about his other characters, I would love to, but just make sure you mark your spoilers appropriately so new viewers don't see anything major from any of the campaigns. As they sneak through the streets, a hooded figure approaches them, a half-orc, played by their guest, Jason Charles Miller. He's a fellow voice actor, but he's also a composer. He actually created the Critical Role theme song. He's playing Garthok, the half-orc rogue, and his first action as a player is to whisper in Liam's and Laura's ears because he's speaking thieves' cant and only they can understand it. He's a member of the Clasp, but he hasn't been back down to the tunnels since the attack. They sneak over to Gilmore's, and along the way they see people looting various buildings, but they also see people clearing away dead bodies. Once again, Matt is really good at describing these sorts of scenes, showing the after effects on the city. And in a disaster-based scenario like this one, that is really important to get right. They reach Gilmore's, which has partially collapsed. And they also find some looters currently in the process of raiding Gilmore's, and Vax loses his shit at them. These guys are planning to take their loot to Thordak. It's their best chance of staying alive and staying in his good graces. And Matt does such a good job of justifying their mindset. This is clearly a fight waiting to happen, but these mooks honestly believe they'll have a better chance of killing these random intruders than they would against a dragon. And in fairness, they're probably right, I guess. An ancient dragon is probably much more dangerous than most members of Vox Machina. But this also shows the desperation of the people in the city and establishes that Thordak wants loot, which is going to be important for the future of this arc. The dragons want gold and rewards from the people. But anyway, it obviously breaks out into a fight because, as Marisha says, as they're rolling initiative, this is exactly what they need right now. A fight that they can clearly win. And it's initiative, so here are some highlights. It's a fucking bloodbath. After the fight ends, one goon is cowering on the ground, and another, a dwarf, is magically dominated by Scanlan and just pulling loot off of the fresh corpses and dropping it at Vox Machina's feet. Grog is also just practically vibrating with all the blood and strength he got from Craven Edge, and Keyleth's lightning spells gave the real weather of Amon just the nudge it needed to start raining. Vax knocks out the cowering survivor and leaves him in the alley. Unfortunately, a lot of Gilmore's shop was obliterated in the attack, and since this was the third pass these mooks took to steal stuff from the shop, and who knows who else might have also raided Gilmore's already, a lot of his magical wares are gone. This is a super smart move as a game master. The players do not need a brand new horde of magic items, especially without actually spending any resources to get them, like spending gold or burning through spell slots and hit points on an adventure. It would be a windfall of magic swag that would be completely unearned and probably cut down the narrative tension more than a little bit. My own feelings on magic item shops notwithstanding, this is absolutely the wrong time, dramatically and mechanically, for the party to get their hands on a whole bunch of new magical stuff. And I could see myself leaving some stuff behind, or having more of it be destroyed in the initial attack, melted in acid or whatever. Maybe I had to make all the leftover magic enchant the acid into some acid elemental that they had to fight. But this is way smarter, because while this fight was child's play, it served a purpose. It showed what the situation in Amon is as a whole, and what steps the remaining residents are taking to survive Thordak's reign. And the idea of dragon hordes are pretty important to a story about dragons. It sets up a future reward for when they can finally kill Thordak, and it will also open the door for other ways to potentially deal with these dragons, since they know how much these dragons like gold and treasure and rewards. This is super vital information, and all of that probably came from solving a very simple problem. How do you keep your players from just getting a grab bag of magic items in a single session? And this was a really clever solution. This is also why the dwarf doesn't find much gold on the bodies of his dead friends. They've already dropped off a lot of their booty.
They gave it to the dragon.
What?
Assholes.
They gave it to him.
The dragon.
The dragon.
Him. Whatever that is.
Did we ask?
No.
Well, he's still
now.
fucking
Ask
out
a
there
happy
if you wanna-
dwarf standing
Yeah,
right
that's
there.
nice.
Oh, a dwarf.
Hey!
Who have you been? Who have you been collecting swag for?
The dragon.
Okay.
As long as we give him what's important and what's worth, he'll keep us alive. Even protect us.
He told you
Where are
this?
you taking it to?
Oh,
To the center of town. Which I've never been before, the cloud top itself.
the gates to it are just open.
Aye,
The dragon just sits there in the open, collecting his bounty.
there's lines. Folks lined up bringing all they have to him.
That's great.
So if this is your third trip back, the first two you already took it to him, or did you take it somewhere else? To
Well,
store?
we've put it all in a place so that then we could take it to him.
Take us to that place.
All right. He turns around, starts walking away.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's fine.
Wait, not yet. We're still almost.
But wait, just tell us where it is. How about that? How about you just tell us where it is?
Oh.
Right now.
Certainly. And he explains about a 15-minute walk from here. There is a well that is between four buildings in kind of an alley cross section. All of it's been actually put into the well, which has been kind of hollowed out, or all the water's been repressed with dirt, and it's just been filled with all their everything they've gathered.
At this point, the dwarf saves from his domination, and they knock him out and tie him up. They go into the back room of Gilmore's and find a cellar door. They discover a few survivors below, including Sherry, the girl who worked the counter at Gilmore's, and the other survivors are the royal family, Uriel's wife, the Empress Salda, and their 3 children. Salda thinks her husband, Uriel, died in the attack, but Gilmore was able to save the rest of them. And this is when they discover Gilmore is lying on the floor, bleeding and hurt, but still clinging to life. After this episode, Matt tweeted that he was rolling death saves on Gilmore's behalf to see if he'd lived through the night. And he also confirmed, though I can't remember where he said this, but he once basically said that if Vox Machina had gone to the Well of Treasure instead of staying at Gilmore's shop, Gilmore probably would have died, as basically a consequence of their inaction. Pike casts Heal on Gilmore, which brings him to consciousness, but he's still badly hurt. Now, mechanically, he just got 70 hit points. He should obviously be far better off than that, and thus, the eternal struggle of narrative versus mechanics and how hit points are described rears its head once again. Because narratively, Gilmore can't just be fine. He's been through way too much to be able to just shrug it off. It's not narratively satisfying to find Gilmore injured, cast a single spell, and have him up and moving around like nothing happened. Now, that's not to say that it's a terrible idea for every game. Obviously, having access to high-level magic is designed to give players the authority to change the world with a word, including making some of their problems go away. If your playstyle focuses less on tropes and typical story beats, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with rewarding the players when they cast their highest level spell to heal their most beloved NPC. But the players on Critical Role are storytellers first and foremost. That's the style they enjoy, so for this game, and for this point in the story, Gilmore can't just be cool and good and healthy all of a sudden. It also invites questions about how magical healing works, considering how close to death's door Gilmore was, and your own individual feelings on that subject help shape your style as a game master. As we can see, Matt's style leans more toward reinforcing the consequences of the narrative, rather than allowing a single spell to help Gilmore recover all at once. And quite frankly, that's probably because he'd rather draw out the drama and roleplay a weak Gilmore who is still feeling the effects of the dragon attack.
A minute passes in silence. Another minute passes.
Smoothing his hair out. Hey. Hey.
And the mouth opens and the eyes begin to lull open, and the irises begin to try and find some point of focus, and Gilmore slowly lolls the head back up and looks into your face and smiles instinctually, a little blood at the corner of his mouth, and just looks up at you. It's always what I assumed I'd see in my last moments.
Bad day, huh?
Strangely enough, I'm pretty sure I've had worse.
No offense, darling, but you look like shit.
We can't have that, can we? He lifts his hand and kind of begins to try and cast a spell. You can see a bit of arcane prestidigitation begin to try and muster, and he kind of
Gilmore.
coughs, and the magic sputters and fades.
Give it time.
You do rest.
Gilmore tells them that he pulled Salda and the children with him when he escaped and tried to bring Uriel, but Uriel pushed him away and was focusing on evacuating others. He went back for Vox Machina and he saw Uriel's body then. He also rescued Secret Assume and Topher Bratoris, the Dragonborn woman from the council, and the two of them are now out looking for more survivors. He also knows Brom Goldhand did not make it. That was another generic dude from the Tal'Dorei Council. I really couldn't tell you anything about Brom Goldhand other than his name was Brom Goldhand. They offer to cast another Cure Wounds on Gilmore, but he waves them off. He's doing well enough thanks to Pike's spell. This is another wise move. You don't want to imply that a level 1 healing spell is equally as powerful and useful as a level 6 spell, so it's best to avoid the topic by declining the casting of the spell at all. Gilmore also went to where the dragon was sitting and collecting tribute, and he tells them that he saw some sort of irregularity in the scales on Thordak's belly, something made of a different material, something smooth, something that pulsed with power. Matt is very slowly revealing this bit of lore, and I actually don't remember when Vox Machina learns what's going on with this, but I like how slowly Matt is providing them with these details. Anyway, Gilmore wound up in a duel with the dragon. He barely made it back to his shop alive. Now, Vex wants to go to the well and get the rest of the loot, but Percy has another plan.
One of the reasons why a government allows something like the Clasp to exist in a city like this is because it is a shadow infrastructure that will survive an attack like this. It is an infrastructure designed... Grog. It's a bunch of people who are really good at making money when everything's working. And when everything stops working, they get very angry and want to make everything work again.
Yeah, I understand that.
So, we have a group of people who are well organized with everything to gain by this dragon leaving. They're ready, they're prepared, they're probably more prepared than anybody else would be. And they might be willing to help us. They have tunnels, they have men, they have spies, they have everything we need. Please tell me if I'm wrong here.
You couldn't be more right.
They might be the friends that we need at this moment.
Vex, Scanlan, Garthok, and reluctantly Vax go to the well to get some loot, which Keela thinks is an extraordinarily bad idea given what happened the last time they went to go get some loot. Like, she does not believe that Thordak is totally unaware of where the treasure is. But there's no reasoning with Vex when gold is on the line. And honestly, if she's right and they can get some magic items, that would be awesome. And Vax also hates the idea of going after this loot, but he's not going to leave Vex and can't change Vex's mind, so Keyleth can't change Vax's mind. So while Vex's team heads off in search of treasure, the rest of the party takes the survivors back to the keep, and then they all plan to go meet up and go to the Clasp after that. Garthok shows Vex's team how to get into the Clasp, and then they go to the well, and they discover that someone has already come and taken all this loot, presumably to deliver it to Thordak. Because nothing has actually changed. This is still not the time to give the party a whole bunch of new magic items. But this also helps reinforce that the people they encountered at Gilmore's were not a fluke. They were not an aberration. This is probably how a lot of the people in Amon are dealing with the Thordak situation. Vex starts to trail the footprints of the folks who took the loot from the well, but when it becomes clear that they were definitely going right to the dragon's nest, she reluctantly turns back. Garthok parts ways with the group and goes back into the Clasp. Meanwhile, the other team intimidates some more muggers as they make their way back to the keep, and eventually, when the other team gets back, Keyleth is very relieved because they came back without loot and without being injured, so she assumes Vax talked Vex out of it after all. And before Vax can explain that he did not, Vex says, yeah, he did. My guess is Vex felt that there was no sense in telling Keyleth that she was wrong to be worried, and that Vex was wrong to go after the loot. And that's the end of the episode. However, there's a little moment from after the episode that I love. See, at this point in the show, the cast was doing a monthly Christmas feature where some of them would stay late and open gifts once a month. Some highlights included stuffed animals, miniatures, heartfelt letters, a huge replica of Craven Edge in this episode that needs to be assembled. It's that sort of thing. But then, Matt receives a truly epic gift.
Now, I want to preface this, that for 7 years, I've been longingly looking at this mini from a distance. And, well, for the members of Vox Machina that are here, I would like you to meet Thordak, Cinder King, who also breathes fire.
I got real mixed feelings about that.
And yes, that is basically to scale. Oh, and then he gets another one.
What's going on?
No.
What the hell? Better hope Thordak doesn't have a twin.
You have one to open and play with and one to keep in box, so
MIB.
it goes up in value. It's a collector's item. Look, he's like, no, why would I do that?
I open my toys, Marisha. You should know this. I don't buy them for collecting. I buy them for playing.
Same, homie. Same. The only reason my Strahd Funko Pop is still in the box is because he doesn't stand up if he's not. Anyway, that does it for this episode, but we'll be back in 2 weeks to discuss episode 42, Dangerous Dealings. This is the episode where the party goes to meet with the Clasp, and things get pretty juicy. I'm sure we're going to have a lot to talk about. In the meantime, please make sure to like and subscribe. I've got some really cool videos coming up in the next couple of days and in the next couple of weeks. Please also consider supporting me on Patreon. It helps get me closer to my goal to take this series weekly. Join my Discord server to hang out with other awesome people, and follow me on Twitch to catch my live streams. I just made a video where I take a bunch of character backstories and craft a campaign based on them, much like how Matt Mercer does for his games, so make sure to check that video out if you haven't already. Until next time, play fair and have fun.